What's happening, fellas? It's Two-Stroke Tuesday, and I figured what better way to honor our friend and Vietnam era Air Force veteran Shawn Kerkes with a video of his bike. May he rest in peace. If you follow us on the channel, the truckload of bike videos, which I'll pin in the comments, those are all his bikes, and he had visions of restoring them and riding with his son Joe, who lives in Maine now. But he was still serving our country, working at the Pentagon, traveling a lot, serving his country after many years. And those days just slipped by, and he never really got the chance to do that with his son. So, bike sounds freaking fantastic. Nothing like a big bore two-stroke Yamaha Enduro. This is the one they have. Highly collectible Yamaha 360. So his son Joe contacted me, told me what happened, and asked if we'd be interested in taking on the project of resurrecting his bikes. This bike has been parked since Y2K, 23 years it has not been run, and it was super crusty and dusty. They were gonna restore it, but sadly, Shawn passed away. So Joe called us and said, hey Ken, can you bring her back to life? Can you make it rideable again? So it's done, it's ready. I just got off the phone with Joe and told him I was going to shoot a video in honor of his pops. And Justin's going to do a drive-by for us so we can hear it sing.
Yeah, let's do it.
Guys, this is an original paint RT3 Yamaha with 2,559 miles. The bike is 50 years old and has 2,500 miles on it. Now, Shawn had a big collection, but he was busy taking care of business, working at the Pentagon. It was a long commute for him, so he didn't have as much time with his family as he would have liked, and his life was cut short, sadly. He passed away recently, unexpectedly. So, but his bike and his memory lives on in this motorcycle right here, folks. I get a little choked up just saying that because I know how much these bikes meant to him and his son Joe, who I just got off the phone with. If you follow the channel, you know that I'm doing a restoration on the CR500 that Shawn had, also one of my favorite motorcycles, and we upheld our promise to get the bike running for $1,000. We had it running, and his son Joe saw the finished product and asked if we'd take it to the limit and do he upped the budget to $3,000. So we're repainting the frame and putting new tires and a gold plated FMF Gold Series pipe on there, and all new plastics and graphics. It's going to be a beautiful piece when that's done. This one here is ready to go. Shawn is now buried in the Quantico National Cemetery with a lot of other veterans who served our country. And his son Joe just bought a shed. It's being built right now to store the two best bikes in his collection. This in the 500 Yamaha, which is a beautiful piece. It's got a pristine frame rails, original rims and radiators on the CR. It really is a forever bike. Both these bikes, if you think about it, what's better than a CR500 and a Yamaha DT360 or RT360 for their applications? And really, there's newer bikes, but there's really nothing better. Like my dad used to say, if you're not happy right now, you'll never be happy with these two bikes. Like I said, there's better. We sell new gas 700s that are like spaceships compared to the old bikes, but there's just something about the character of a big bore two-stroke motocross or enduro bike like this DT that are second to none. So we're running VP fuel in this. Never run pump gas in a classic motorcycle ever. So we're running VP, ethanol-free fuel on it. We've got new fuel lines on it, new vent tubes. It's got a new reproduction fuel petcock, brand new foam air filter. I'll tell you the story of what Wizard was up against when he worked on the bike. Park it across the street here. Run through all the lights. Turn signals. Do the left turn signal. Headlight. There's a horn. How about the horn? We got all the lights working. The gauges are working. Idles beautifully. And it's got that big bore shake that only a big bore two-stroke will do. So it's a beautiful piece. It has the original keychain from the Yamaha dealer. Keeping it green. Riding clean and sober. The work order that we do on this is the actual work order, and this is Wizard's notes when he worked on it. He did the compression test. He did quite a bit of work on this thing. There's 3 pages of notes here. Compression test was perfect, 150 psi, which you'd expect with a 2,500 mile bike. And of course, the bike, before we even kicked it over, because you never kick over a bike that's been sitting for 20 years without fogging the cylinders and lubricating the cylinders with our mystery magic oil mix that we put in there. Put a new spark plug in it after testing the compression, installed a brand new battery, removed the carb, put it in the tank, completely dismantled it, cleaned out the carb, set the air pressure in the tires. The front one didn't hold the air, it went flat, so we had to put a new tube in it, and check the spark. There was no spark. So Chris removed the flywheel, and the flywheel, I sent Joe pictures of it. It looked like something that was in the ocean. It was like all covered with rust and crusty crustaceans. It was kind of ironic because the one that Justin was working on, the 699 mile one from Japan, was pristine. This one was super crusty, so it had no spark. So he pulled the flywheel. There was actually some water inside there, drained it out, cleaned it, and went through the whole electronic system on the bike. He cleaned set after the carb came out of the tank, rebuilt the carb, adjusted the carb. He dipped all the brass parts in the tank, replaced the main jet O-ring, cleaned, set the carburetor. He also took the fuel tank off, flushed out the fuel tank. I was reading his notes here; they're a little blurry, but flushed out the fuel tank, installed the new air filter after cleaning the air box, changed the gear lube, checked the oil pump, which is something you got to do on these because they are oil pump injection. So he checked the oil pump and bled the oil pump and flushed and filled with new 2-stroke premix oil. He cleaned the flywheel that was all crusty and crustaceaned, filed the points and set the points, and got the bike running. Reinstalled the fuel tank, replaced the fuel lines, reinstalled the ignition cover, and went to start it. And when he got it going and put it in the gear, it lurched forward and snapped the chain. The clutch was stuck, probably been stuck for many moons, and this is a big 350cc 2-stroke, so when you slam it in the gear like that, luckily it broke the chain and nothing in the transmission. He thought it broke the transmission, so we put the new gold chain on there and got it running again. The clutch was stuck, so he pop started it and drove it down the road and repeatedly, went through the gears and slammed on the rear brakes and freed up the clutch, so the clutch stops and works as it should. That's pretty common for that to happen after the bike's been sitting forever. Normally we would take the clutch apart, but Joe was on a $1,000 budget here, and we had already gone past that. Once we dug into the ignition, we were like, "Oh man, Houston, we have a problem. This is going to be more than you bargained for here." So we said, "Keep going." So we kept going, but we didn't want to go too far over the budget. The whole idea was this is exactly the way I would do it if it was my bike. I'd get it running perfectly and ride the wheels off of it for a while and make sure the transmission's good, the clutch is good, the carburetion's good, all electrical is good. The last thing you want to do is do a frame off restoration on a bike and find out that your crank seals are messed up and the training's messed up and you got to take it apart and start all over. So this is exactly how I would do it if it was my own bike. I'm sure if Shawn was alive today, he'd be pleased with the progress here. So the Wizard test rode it, and of course it sprung a leak. The petcock was leaking, not uncommon. It's 20 years old. So he moved the fuel tank and replaced the fuel petcock with a brand new reproduction, high quality petcock and new fuel lines there. So the whole fuel system's been gone through. Then the front brake, the front tire had gone flat again, so he filled it up. He removed it, took the front drum brake, fixed the flat, removed and replaced the front wheel, and replaced the tube. He removed the front drum brake arm, moved it 1 notch for the brakes to work better, adjusted the rear brakes, added a gallon of VP 94 fuel, and got it running and test rode it. And here we are to today. The first thing we did, the very first thing we did when it came off the truck, I personally, because, well, I usually do this when the bikes come in, I personally steam clean and power wash and hand wash the bike. And the reason I do that is it brings me closer to the bike. And when you wash a motorcycle, you discover a lot of things you didn't notice in a picture or a photo because you're touching every square inch of it. So that's why I'm doing it. I'm analyzing all the surfaces of the motorcycle and cleaning it. And I don't like sending the bikes up to the techs to work on them until they're, clean. Because the last thing you want is greasy hands, you're messing up their tools. The techs, they got an air-conditioned shop, and we want them to be working on clean bikes and not make a big mess in our shop too. So this thing was super, had 23 years. It probably hadn't been washed in 23 years. So if you look at the video, the truckload video, this bike is actually in that. So the first thing I do, I've got an $8,000 diesel-fired, high-pressure steam cleaner power washer, and I start with that. I steam clean the whole bike top to bottom before I put any chemicals on it. Then I take the Motul chain clean and I spray Motul chain clean, usually a half a can on the entire ass end of the bike. Now, the chrome still looks good on the rear wheel because why? Well, it was covered with chain lube for 30 years, and a lot of the surfaces still look pretty good because the chain lube had gone everywhere. So we put the chain clean on there, you let that sit 5 minutes, and while you're doing that, you use the Motul motor wash, and I start at the top, I soak the whole bike with it, then I use a bucket of water and a nice clean terry cloth rag, and I hand wash the whole bike, and then I steam clean it again. And that's, that takes care of the bike while it's standing upright. And then I take a stand and I cock the wheel this way all the way, and I'll show you in a video if I haven't already. Actually, I have shown you guys in the video. And I drop this handlebar right down to the stand, the motorcycle stand, so that I can power wash the bottom of the engine. And then I flip it over and do the other side. So I call it a rotisserie detail, or rotisserie wash. Basically, I lay the bike on its side, just like the pro teams do at the Nationals. When you see them wash a motorcycle, they don't do it standing up. They lay it on its side. They basically turn it upside down, because that's where you get all the mud and the grease and everything in the areas you can't see. So this bike was thoroughly washed and clean. If this were my bike, I would take it and ride it a bit, enjoy it, and decide, what do I want to do? Do I want to make this thing a showpiece trailer queen where I'm never going to take it off-road and do a full frame off, or do I want to make it a rider? If so, there's things you can do. I mean, the front fork finish on here had failed probably 30 years ago. They clear coated it, so it looks like it's got calicos. You could sand that down and polish that like chrome. You could polish the hubs. I would not repaint it. I would leave the original paint on it. That's proof of the condition. I'd probably polish the engine cases so those should shine up like a new diamond. I'd probably paint the cylinder black and like it was supposed to be, and then polish this one fin right here. The original frame paint, I would not repaint the frame because it's still shiny, and that's proof. 2,500 mile original big bore with the original paint is just unheard of. So I would repaint the chain guide. Maybe repaint the rear fender, or maybe re-clear coat it so at least there's a shine on it. I'd polish the rear hub here, polish this side of aluminum, and I'd probably paint the header and replace the 360 decal, which fell off before it got in our hands. So, but as you can see, the tank cleaned up pretty nice. I hand washed it, Motooled it, then I put a thin layer of WD-40 on there and took a terry cloth and wiped it down. A great way to clean it really nicely and preserve the finish before it goes into buffing or any other level of restoration. But as far as I'm concerned, man, this thing, it's got everything works on it. It has the mirrors, the original bars, and let's face it, it's a 50-year-old classic big bore Yamaha Enduro owned by the same guy. Guys, there's pictures, and I should have one from Shawn's wife. I talked to Joe, his son, today. They're going to send me a picture. They have pictures of him riding wheelies in front of the barracks on this bike right here in 1975. He had the bike almost 50 years. Wow. Can you imagine that? He was just a young kid. I gotta see that. Yeah, he was in the Air Force, and they're sending me some pictures of him with his bike. So I don't know if they have any of him riding the CR500. I know he bought that in the 90s. So, but it's pretty cool to think that he was a Vietnam veteran that ended up working in the Pentagon later in his career, and that he loved motorcycles as much as us common folk love motorcycles, right? So it's just a big part of our life. It was a big part of him. It's kind of like you can go to Daytona or Laconia, Americade, or a national motocross race, and you'll be surrounded by, you might be surrounded by people in the military, police officers, people in politicians, blue collar guys. It's kind of like the melting pot. We're all brothers when we're sitting on two wheels, right? And we all wave at each other going down the road. There's no cultural gap. There's no discrimination. I don't care what color you are. If you love motorcycles, you're a brother of mine. I could go to any event in the country by myself and be surrounded by friends, and that's really what this is all about. And it's cool to see that Shawn passed his love and passion for motorcycles down to his son, Joe. We've been working on these bikes on and off for a couple weeks now. I got some of his other bikes that are coming through the ranks. I got a blue DT3 that we purchased from him that I'll be doing a video on soon. So, and of course his 500 should be beautiful when we're done with it. We're doing a red, white, and blue theme on his 500 in honor of his service for our country and his long career with the Air Force, and working at the Pentagon. I figured what would be more fitting than a red, white, and blue CR 500, right?
There's nothing more fitting. That's perfect.
So, anyways, Joe, I hope you like what we do with your Pop's bike. I hope you have some fun with it. I say come pick it up and go ride it around ride it to the beach in Maine and have some fun on it while the weather's still nice.
Yeah, ride it back to the base. That would be cool.
You know, it'd be really cool if you could bring it to the base his Pops was at and do a wheelie in front of it 50 years later.
He has to. He has to. That'd be incredible.
Yeah, no doubt. He still got the original keychain there from 75. Anyways, thank you all for watching. God bless Shawn. Rest in peace. God bless y'all. And of course, God bless the United States of America.